All right, my name is Greg. I'm a LAPD detective. Last name's Kading. I guess that's important. Greg Kading, and you're calling me for a Skype interview.
Yes, sir. Actually, I've known I don't know if you're familiar with Derek Parker. He's a hip hop cop out here in New York, and
Yeah,
he had told me that when your book first came out, I believe in 2009, was it?
2011.
Oh, 2011. I'm sorry. That Zip actually came because he had a relationship with Zip, and Zip actually came into his office all angry, saying, "Listen, look what Greg is doing. He put me in his book, you know." And he actually said that he wanted to tell Derek, but he just couldn't do it. He kept saying, Derek, I can't do that."
Hey, it's understandable, right? Considering
Yeah.
considering Zip's from and his associates and his background, it's not like he wants to go on Front Street with this whole thing. So I can see why he wouldn't want to talk to anybody about it, especially a cop who would probably put it out there.
Right.
So it's understandable.
Well,
but it kind of goes to validate the whole story, right?
Absolutely. The one thing that's blowing up right now is the bullshit theory of I'm not gonna mention his name because I don't want to I don't know what huh.
You're not trying to give him any more publicity,
right? It's funny how the bullshit is so, like, people love the lie more than the truth.
Yeah, and one of the guys involved in that project, told me one time. He said, "Listen, Greg, Pac fans don't want the truth; they just want content." And that statement kind of illustrates where they come from. They don't care whose lives they endanger. They don't care whether they do any due diligence to verify facts. They just care about putting out a product. And that's straight out of their mouth. Pac fans don't want the truth. Pac fans just want content. And that's all you need to know about them, in order to evaluate what they do and what they put out.
But I mean, they're misleading the public. I mean, and you already know they're doing it for money. I mean, to me, it's kind of sickening. How are you gonna keep? And then the man is dead.
I understand if you're doing legitimate journalism and that you do it for a fee. If that's your pursuit, that's your passion, so be it. I understand you get paid for what you do and for the effort you put into it. And it costs money to make these products too. So you want to at least, at the very least, recuperate that. But to put out lies and to put out misinformation and to do that knowingly, that's a whole integrity issue, and that shouldn't be tolerated. And I think that too many fans have been misled. And it's stories like these that have really convoluted and interfered and made the investigation more difficult than it should have been. Is all the lies and misinformation that has misled everybody. And it's the police effort, the police investigations too. Russell Poole was horribly misled. And he may have had good intentions, which I believe he did in the beginning. But it was the lies that misled him. So, bad information is just that. It's bad information. And people need to take the time and evaluate information and check their facts before they put it out there as truth.
I've been a watcher since this whole thing has been outplaying, since your documentary came out, and them trying to dispute it, trying to put dirt on your name, just trying to discredit you very desperately, I think.
No, it's funny.
Allegedly, I don't want to.
I kind of wanted to jump in there because that same individual that told me, made the statement about the Tupac fans not caring about the truth and they just wanted content, had called me up early on after the publication of my book and said, "Hey, Greg, this is back when things were cool," and he was in my corner. He said, "Listen, I just wanted you to know I just was in this meeting with R.J. Bond and these other individuals, and they collectively had come to a realization that the only way that they could stay relevant in the story is to discredit you, is to do a character assassination of you. And so now it's but they miss the point, because it's not about my character, it's not about who I am, it's about whether the information I'm providing is factual. That's where they miss the point, and that's why I think that murder rap has been very successful in getting people to see to see clearly what happened back in 1997 and 96. So it just goes to illustrate that these personal attacks and all of this is just part of an attempt to stay relevant in this story, and they'll do whatever they can to do, to accomplish that.
Even as just the fans watching it, it's I believe a lot of them are just simple-minded. It's right in their face, and they just believe something that they watch. In a matter of seconds, their opinion switches from, okay, is it Puffy or is it the little half-dead theory?
Right. Well, I believe that everybody has their opinions, and they have the right to their opinions. But I think a lot of this has to do with what their predispositions are socially. If you're inclined to believe that all cops are corrupt and that we're all a bunch of racists, then it's easier to believe the cop did it theory. Right. Because there has always been that there's this big government conspiracy to eliminate Tupac because he was going to create a movement that was so dangerous that they had to suppress him. And then there's predispositions, about the LAPD and whether they are involved in Biggie's murder. And it's actually a more captivating story to think that dirty cops were involved in this. And so you're inclined to believe that because it's a more interesting story. Nobody wants to believe this was just a simple gang retaliation, or that this was just simple, egos and issues that got gangs involved. And, so a lot has to do with people's just predispositions, and then they'll interpret information to support those predispositions.
You had put out a video recently with disproving the little half-dead theory. You actually sat down with the Patton brothers, and I believe the victim that was molested to write the fictitious letter or whatnot.
Yeah, it's really sad. The whole thing's pathetic, sad, and to think that this is all generated from, or really originates with this, schizophrenic individual, this Hispanic guy from the Valley who claims to be one of the shot callers for the 5 Deuce Hoover Crips. I mean, that alone is just a ridiculous, proposition. But yeah, it's really sad. I mean, she suffers for permanent mental, emotional, psychological disabilities from her abuse. The Patton brothers, as you can see if you watch that video, Malcolm's just a nice, easygoing, square guy who found himself in the middle of this stupid theory. And then, of course, Sharitha and Reggie Wright Jr. are decent people. Sharitha, I just had dinner with her the other night and talking about this, and she's just dumbfounded by the fact that anybody would put this out there without any factual basis whatsoever. And, she has kids that have to come home and deal with the social issues that these stories create. And Reggie Ray Jr. is the same boat. He's got kids and family and, church friends. And all I can tell you about Reggie, and this goes all the way back to the mid-'90s, Reggie didn't always make the best decisions, but Reggie's not a criminal. Reggie, was trying to do the best he could with what he had to work with, protecting death row from itself. A bunch of gang members in a work environment. You've got off-duty cops, all of this going on. You're trying to manage it. And he did as good a job as he could. But as far as the investigations go, we relied heavily on Reggie Wright Jr. He would bring people, for interviews that wouldn't otherwise be willing to come in for interviews. And he allowed us access to things that we needed to see. And so he was very helpful up until the time that my book was published.
Yeah, the theorists try to paint your relationship with Reggie as you guys have this whole cover up,
Yeah.
Which is, ridiculous.
It is. And anybody ever sat down and talked to Reggie or knew him personally, or sat down and talked with me and knew me personally, know that it's just not the way we operate. And it really is just a side joke.
And for the for the people watching, it has to, I have to put it out there as that, because they're gonna think I'm on your side, and I'm I'm on this just a murder rap geek or something. But the difference with the work that you have put out, you actually put out evidence. You have a witnesses that confirm this. You have Little C saying, hey, every time we went out to LA, there was these Crips that were providing protection for us. They were
right. Yeah, there's multiple layers of corroboration to the claims that Keefe D makes about his association with Bad Boy Records, and about the conflict that was going on between them and the Mob Piru, and the conflict between Bad Boy and Death Row. I mean, it's been corroborated on so many levels that it's hard to ignore.
Actually, I'm not sure if you heard, but have you this guy who did the other movie? He actually sat down with Keefe D, and Keefe D was denying that what he said on tape, what he admitted to you.
Yeah. So years later, of course, this is all out in the public. He's got to do as much damage control as he can. I don't know if people are aware of this, that within his own neighborhood, this is a well-known fact. Nobody's surprised by this, but to have him go public with it didn't sit well. In fact, when one of his closest friends, a guy named Wendell, they called him Wendog, when he was killed, and Keefe's one of his closest friends, they didn't even want Keefe to be a pallbearer at the funeral, because they thought that he kind of, sold out on the gang, or sold out on the code of the streets by cooperating. But what they don't really fully appreciate is the predicament Keefe D was in. It was either he cooperate and tell us what he knew, or he's going to prison for the rest of his life. Which, it wasn't the prison that scared him. It was the fact that he thought family members were going to get gaffled up in the investigation in his dope case, and they would have been. And so he did what he had to do to protect them. And I think most people, even his friends from the gang on the streets, would have done the same thing in that situation. So you got to look at it from that perspective. But of course, now Keefe D is not going to go out and meet some guy after he just gets out of prison and say, yeah, I'm the guy who did it, because he can be held accountable for that. If he admits to anything, the Las Vegas Police Department can then say, hey, we have a taped admission of Keefe D saying he is involved in this murder. That's very much different than the taped admission he has with me, which is protected under a proffer agreement. His Fifth Amendment rights apply to his confession with us. That's why it's called a proffer session. We can't use his testimony against him in that situation. However, if he goes on tape anywhere else and says, yeah, I was involved, that's incriminating evidence that can be used against him. So very different situation for him. And I don't know, I didn't hear the whole recant, but from what I understood, he said something to the effect of, I just told them what they wanted to hear. Well, that's absolutely accurate. He told us what we wanted to hear, which was the truth. We had sat down with him and said, tell us the truth. And he told us that. And that's exactly what we wanted to hear. So when he says, I told them what they wanted to hear, you don't always have to interpret that as, I lied to them. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. And here's the thing with people that don't understand like how the law works, and when you admit something like that and have a deal on the table, you can't just, I can't just admit to something and because I think at the same time I could be making it up. And when you're provided with that information, you have to do a background check, make sure you have to verify everything. And I'm pretty sure that's something you did, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what we did, what these other characters don't do, is take information and then corroborate it. Just because somebody says it doesn't make it true. We have to go out and substantiate it. And we did that with Keefe. Of course, we don't have any other witnesses to the conversation he allegedly had with Puffy Combs. But since we verified everything else he had said, and there was so much supporting circumstantial evidence, we give him the benefit of the doubt on that one aspect. But, we did our due diligence, and this is what he said, and we believe it, and all the pieces fit. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as investigators, that's our job, is to go out and verify if something's true or false.
So, some people think to believe that there's a lot of inconsistencies with Keefe D's story, and of course I believe we covered this already, but and I've heard it before. People seem to think that you're leading him on in the interview, which I don't know how that can be done, leading somebody to confess to murder. You know what I mean? I just don't follow it.
Yeah, listen, the whole interview was arranged by the U.S. Attorney's Office, and Keefe D had his lawyer sitting right there in the room with us. And, there was an FBI agent in the room, 2 other LAPD detectives, along with myself. And I wasn't even honestly aware that there was a tape recorder going. One of the other LAPD guys had a tape recorder under his notebook. And, so the interview, for all intent and purposes, was just to develop an open discussion with Keefe D, because we knew we were going to be talking to him about much more than just Pac's murder or much more than just Biggie's murder. We were going to be talking to him for a long time about a lot of things. And so you just kind of develop a casual, back and forth, comfortable dialogue. It's not under these circumstances, you don't need to be an interrogator. You can just be an interviewer, and you need to sit and be receptive and work so that he feels comfortable having dialogue with you. And so, yeah, it's not the most technically, it's not the most technically designed interview, but it was never intended to be. And 2 days after, my coworker walks up to me with a CD in his hand, and he goes, "Hey, here's the tape. Here's the recording from that interview." And I was like, "What?" He says, yeah, I recorded it. I was like, well, it'd have been nice if you told us, because who knows what we might have said on that interview that's now captured on tape. And fortunately, there was nothing inappropriate. But, during these kind of discussions, when you're not being recorded, you tend to say maybe some things that you wouldn't say otherwise. And so he hands me the CD, and thank God he did. Thank God. I will always be thankful for him doing that in hindsight, because we captured and memorialized his confession. Otherwise, it would have just been letters on a page. We'd have written it up on a interview report, and it would never have had the kind of impact that it did having the recording.
And was his confession? Was it a few hours long? Was it spread out in a few days?
Well, that particular interview, I think, was around 2 hours. But we interviewed him multiple times at different locations. I interviewed him at his house after I retired. I interviewed him. We interviewed him regarding Biggie's murder. We interviewed him regarding some other things that had gone down in his neighborhood. So there were multiple interviews with Keefe D.
Are you ever going to plan on can we expect to see the full interview at any point?
Yeah, as soon as it doesn't put anybody in harm's way. There's a lot of people's names that were dropped during the interview, and you balance the importance to public information versus what does it do to endanger people's lives or to create situations where people are going to have conflict with one another, and then you've got blood on your hands. We don't do that. We try to be as responsible as possible while still educating the public. But if a date and time comes for, if Keefe D passes and or any of these other individuals, then maybe we will.
I think this is it. Any last words? Anything we didn't cover that you want to tell people?
No, just do your homework, people. That's it. If you really care, do your homework. Let's prove those other guys wrong. That Pac fans do care about the truth, and they're not going to just be, unwittingly swallowing content. If you care enough, just do your homework.
Absolutely.
And, just because you read it in the paper doesn't mean it's facts.
Right.